uplift our young men. And with our speaker, thank you for being here. We dedicate this song to all of the young men for what we want you to be, what we pray for, that you would be all that God intends you to be. God, make my son a tree.
Make my son a tree, so tall and fair is he, but high and born, but not enough, and outward looks can be of blood. God make him giant tall inside, with yearning only satisfied to stretch and try, to reach and rise up to the sky. God, make my son a stone upon the beach alone. The wind and waves may pound and beat and claw the soil about his feet. Oh God, embed his heart in mine with deepness quite, and apart that he, though bound by storms around, may stand its ground. God, see this fine young son, and what else should be done? Carve him and shape to some good form, sincere and useful, bright and oh, God, it's hard to let him go, and yet I know it's better so. Now see my son, my lovely son. To the world and your
sorry for our delay. Definitely wanted to get Brother Crump here safely, give him an opportunity to check in. I just want to say briefly that we really want to thank him. This is one of his stops over a busy week. He's on the road every day this week, away from home. And today, being that this is November 17th, I find it extraordinary that the brother answered our call. Brother Crump. Now, for for those who are not in our fraternity, let me get you to understand why. Today is a very important day for every Omega man. And if every Omega man has his choice, he would like to bring it in with his chapter. But today, he chose to be here with us. He's a 7th district brother, the counselor for the 7th district, and tonight, he chose to be here with us. I can't say any more about that as far as the pleasure and the opportunity that we have here tonight. But before I get into his introduction, I want to offer him some condolences from our brother, Senator Marlon Kempson, who respectfully couldn't be here tonight and wanted me to share this letter with you. Dear Brother Crump, on behalf of the South Carolina State Senate, I want to welcome you to the Senate District 42. As you may recall, you were among the first to endorse my candidacy during the election this summer, and for that I am extremely grateful. Unfortunately, I am unable to greet you in person this evening, as I am in Greenville, South Carolina, attending a policy retreat for a select group of lawmakers. As I have mentioned to you many times, I greatly admire your legal career fighting for justice for people like Trayvon Martin and others who have lost their lives due to the negligent acts of others. The world needs more leaders like you who will stand and fight where others will turn away. I appreciate you coming to Charleston and sharing your experiences as New Alpha celebrates our Achievement Week program. You are a shining example of the voice of the people that cannot be silenced. Fraternity, Senator Marlon Kempson. Before I get into Brother Crump's bio, I understand we have some young men. I'd like them to stand real quickly from the Charleston Youth Leadership Council who are in the house tonight. Are they here with us at Ball Theater? Now I want to give you a little tale about 6 degrees of separation. When I sat where you sit right now, about that time in my life at 16, 17 years old, student government was my thing right here at Burke High School. And I was afforded some very great opportunities by a great Omega man by the name of Mr. LaCalla Gilliard. And let me travel to different parts of the country representing Burke High School. On one of those trips, I met the young man right to my right on the end of the stage, Brother Carl Solomon. We met as high school students in Florida at a convention and maintained our friendship. When we saw each other again during our college years, we were both Omega men. Our friendship has endured since then. And several years ago, he invited me to travel with him to visit his chapter brother, Brother Benjamin Crump. And during that time, we had a great weekend. And I just want to tell a story here, if it was all right with Brother Crump. All right? All right. So, when we were in Florida this particular weekend, we went to see South Carolina State play Florida A&M. Great game. But I was looking forward to the party that night. We were in Florida. I'm from the 6D, so I was looking for my chance to represent. So as we're traveling out to the party, we pull up to this large parking area, probably about the size of Citadel Mall. Cars everywhere. And all I could hear is, Captain, come. I was ready to go. I said, yeah, we're going to do this tonight. I'm going to show you how the 6D get down. So we sat there for a minute in the parking lot as we getting ready to get out. And I'm just hearing my music in my head, I'm ready. And then somebody just took all the wind out of my sail. And said, brothers, we're not going here tonight. I want to take y'all somewhere else. I'm like, what's going on here, man? I came all the way from South Carolina to the party. Now you're just going to stop me in the middle of everything? We left and went to another spot. had a great time. Moral of the story is, there are times in your life where somebody thinks more about you than you know. His character, that lesson of his character at that point always stayed with me as we seen each other over the years at conclaves and different other fraternal activities. The person he was then is just a small measure of who he is now. He's always been a humble brother. And I want to say that as you grow, and I understand we have some basketball players here as well tonight, these moments and these friendships that you make will be lifelong alliances and friendships that you just don't know how they will blossom later on in your life. And when we made that phone call, the brother answered. And the brother chose to be here tonight. It's one of the last stops on a long week for this brother. So, I would go into his bio, but all of you know how strong and powerful this brother's been over the last several months with Trayvon Martin, the case that's going on now in Georgia, that he has been on the front lines of justice and protecting the rights of our people. Without further ado, I need y'all to do something real small for me. Friend, know the ebb of your time, but let them know it's flood also. So as an Omega man and as an alumni of this school right here, I need you to get up off your feet and make it sound like there's 700 people in this building as I introduce to you my friend and my fraternity brother, Benjamin Crump.
Good evening. And Brother Walker, I thank you for not giving too many details about that weekend. You were my lawyer, brother.
Thank you, brother.
I am very honored to be here this evening, and I want to do just a few housekeeping things before I get into my conversation. And God meant for me to be here, Brother Walker. He really did, because when I think about this week starting out in Huntsville, Alabama, then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, then Atlanta, Georgia, then New York City, and then Indianapolis, Indiana, and then last night in Houston. God meant for me to be here to come by and be at Burke High School with its rich history before I go to Harvard University tomorrow to speak there with Trayvon's parents. And when I think of Harvard, in its rich history, I think even though they wanted us there tonight, I said I needed to come and be at an institution of higher learning for my community, at Burke High School.
Mighty know.
But truly, brothers and sisters, if we don't uplift our institutions and say, and that's what I'm going to talk about a lot this evening. Brother Walker is right, a lot of invitations, but that fellow in there, Carl Solomon, you see, friendship is essential to the soul. And anytime I get an opportunity to come to South Carolina and fellowship with one of my best friends, Attorney Carl Solomon out of Columbia, South Carolina, I try not to let that opportunity pass. So, yeah, when I think, Brother Burke, about Founders Day, friendship being essential to the soul, Brother Solomon, Brother Walker, I had to be here because y'all are my true friends. I will say to your District Representative, another good colleague of mine, Brian Beverly, attorney out of Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as I understand District Keeper of Finance, Harold Jackson is present. I bring greetings on behalf of our grand bosses, Dr. Andrew Ray. I also recognize the 60-year service, Brother Wilson. A lot of what we do, I'm sorry, Bishop Moore, okay. And I've been on a lot of planes. But 60 years of service is incredible, and when I think about what we're talking about this evening, it's people like Bishop Moore who lived during Emmett Till, and then with the advent of Trayvon Martin, you say how far we have come and how far we have to go. And so to all the brothers, Brother Wilson, Brother Haynes, Brother Goodman, with your enthusiasm, Brother Washington, who didn't think of Robert to pick me up from the airport, with Brother Walker, Senator Marlon Kempson, another brother in the bar, and as well as Mr. Tony Burke, who with Miss Phil, and I want you to play something for me to make me sound as good as Brother Burke. and I told Brother Solomon, Brother Wilson, I know him who leads Omega Deer. Now, with that being said, brothers, the subject of my comments today is going to be not about standing ground, but about standing for our children. And I want the young people to do me a favor, because I've given a lot of commencements in my day, and I know we got to make sure the young people get the message. So before I start talking to your parents, I want to talk to you all and ask you to do me a favor. All the young people, everybody in the auditorium under the age of 18 years old, I want you to stand up for me. Just stand up for them all. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Big round of applause. There are a lot of people. Now keep standing for a second. And I want you to do me a favor. And I'm not just asking you to do this for me, but I also want you to do this for Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, who are Trayvon's parents. And I think you probably said it before, but I want you to indulge me and say it again and repeat after me 3 times, if you would. I am Trayvon. I am Trayvon. I am Trayvon. I want y'all to say it for me so Trayvon can hear us at Burke High School tonight. I really want you to yell it for me, okay? Can y'all do that for me? I am Trayvon. I am Trayvon. I am Trayvon. Thank you. Have a seat. Now, brothers and sisters, why did I do that? Because I want you all to understand, as Trayvon's mother said so eloquently at that first Million Hoodie rally in New York City, and I need to give you a little background for it. You know the story of Trayvon Martin, 17 years old, walking home from the 7-Eleven with a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea, and the neighborhood watch volunteer with a gun pursuing him and shooting him in his heart. Now, when I got that call from his father and he told me that story, as a lawyer, Attorney Solomon, I said, the lawyers from my group said, Attorney Crump, we need you to help with this case. And I heard these facts and I said, well, y'all don't need me on this case. Y'all don't need me at all on this case, because as an attorney, Attorney Solomon, Attorney Kempson, we're officers in the court. And we know, man, we see people in our community go to jail, get charged with a theory, with a hypothesis. Somebody said they might have thought you were in the area. So here we are with this neighborhood watch volunteer with a gun and an unarmed kid with a bullet in his heart. I said, y'all don't need me. Of course they're going to arrest him. You know, Mr. Martin, and I have to tell you, brothers, I mean, this father, he was a good father. He loved his child. And any of you who got children, you can only imagine the hopelessness and the desperation in his voice when he was calling me saying, you know, Mr. Crump, they said they ain't going to arrest him because they stand your ground law. And I said, Mr. Martin, give it a couple of days. Sure, they're going to arrest him. They got to, man. Go to the courthouse and see how they sending our children to jail. They got to arrest this guy. A couple of days passed. Mr. Martin called me back and he said, see, Attorney Crump, I told you they said they were not going to arrest him. And I said, okay, Mr. Martin, we'll try to help you. Partner Daryl Parks, he said to me, Crump, we're going to have to spend a lot of resources, a lot of time, Brother Boston's a lot of money, and at the end of the day, the police probably still want to arrest him. And I said, Daryl, you're right, but if we don't stand up for this child, who will? And so we took the case, and when we first took the case, it's a phenomenon now. I am Trayvon, and there's the bandwagon and everything, but back then, it was no fanfare at all. In fact, we couldn't get anybody to cover. When Trayvon was killed on that night, one news station in Orlando, Florida. And Orlando, Florida has about 45 news outlets. One news station covered his death. And it was a 42-second story. And that was it. And so, when that bell rings and God has that bell to ring, we all have to make a decision whether we're going to answer the bell. Because God is just testing us. When nobody's looking. Nobody was around when Mr. Martin was talking to me on that phone. And, it was, Ben Crump, are you going to answer the bell? And when you answer the bell, Bishop, I found that when you answer the bell and try to do the right thing, God just takes over from there.
Hello.
I mean, he truly takes over. Nobody could have predicted what would happen with Trayvon Martin's case. The fact that it would be the #1 news story in the world. The fact that the President of the United States will be talking about your case. The fact that, when you think about a little black child losing his life, never in my life had I seen a black child featured prominently in the national conscious. I've seen many white children, Natalie Holloway, John Benet Ramsey, Adam Walsh and stuff. But for the first time, we had a child look like us be on the cover of People magazine, Time Week, Time magazine, Newsweek, all these major medias. And I just said, that's all God doing, because when you answer the bell, God takes over from there. And so I say all that to say, before we got anywhere to that point, we were just trying to get anybody to look at these facts. We had this 17-year-old unarmed kid walking home from the 7-Eleven. And this neighborhood watch volunteer, for whatever reason, started profiling him as a criminal. He don't belong in this community. And we didn't even talk about race initially, because I just thought it was bad enough that you had a neighborhood watch volunteer kill an unarmed child. You know, a neighborhood watch, they don't supposed to have a gun. They supposed to do what? Watch and call the police. And in fact, you know, they told him, we don't need you to get out the car. And so, I say all that to get to this point. 4 weeks afterwards, we go to New York City to do all these interviews. Thanks to the young people on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, because the major media didn't cover it. Thank God for the young people who said, I am Trayvon. It was the young people. A lot like the civil rights movement, it's the young people who take the lead, who see right and wrong and refuse to turn away. When some of us with our government jobs and stuff say, oh, that's too controversial. But we're going to get to that. So we went to New York, and man, we did all these interviews. Interviewed with everybody. Good Morning America, Today Show, Anderson Cooper, The View, The Talk. I mean, we just did interview after interview all the way till we got to Reverend Sharpton, Politics Nation on MsNBC that night. And you could imagine his parents were emotionally spent because, you know, they're doing interview after interview, and in every interview, they know how the story is going to end. It's going to end up with a bullet in their baby's heart, and he's never coming back. And so Sabrina was just emotionally spent at the end of the day. And after we did the interview with Reverend Sharpton, he said, you know, Crump, Mr. Martin, Miss Sabrina, these kids on my radio program in New York, they wanted to have this rally of support for you, this hoodie rally. Now I'm dating myself, young people, because when I first heard of a hoodie rally, I said, hoodie rally? Well, you know, what's that? And everything. But Reverend Sharpton said, you know, these young people, they want to show support for the family, and they are going to have this rally in Grant Park, and I think you all should go over and try to say thank you if you can. And Sabrina was like, I just can't do it. She, on top of being emotionally spent, and you know, you all know the bond between the mother and the son. There's no stronger bond, and certainly us Omegas know that. And on top of all of that, she was having a head cold. And she said, I just can't do it. And Reverend Sharpton said, you know, well, the young people, they seem really excited for you all to just make an appearance. Can y'all just try? And I felt some sense of obligation knowing that it was the young people who got us to that point where the major media was finally starting to cover the campaign for justice for Trayvon. And so I said, Sabrina, let's try to do it. And so finally, her and Mr. Martin, we said we would go. And, you know, I was thinking to myself, honestly, brothers, that here we are in New York, 1,000 miles from this little town called Sanford, Florida. You know, it ain't going to be that many people. You know, it may be 100, 200 people. And so I said, come on, we'll do it and be quick, get you on the plane and get back to Florida. Well, we went over there, Attorney Solomon, and man, God is just incredible. I could not believe what I saw. Because remember, this was young people, they hadn't planned for this only that morning. This was a 24-hour thing. They had planned on Twitter and Facebook telling everybody Trayvon parents are in town. We want to have a hoodie rally to show support. And when we left 30 Rockefeller Plaza and went a couple of blocks over to Grant Park, there were over 30,000 people assembled there. And it was incredible. I mean, and they had cameras everywhere. You know, we were surprised. I got to tell you, boy, the NYPD was really surprised. They were like, what the, you know, they were, all these black people gathered and they didn't have no notice of it. And they were trying to control it. And you all saw it on CNN and NBC, and they cut into, it was such a massive demonstration, they cut into the television stations all over the country, and I was like, whoa, you cannot predict this. This is only God intervening. And so we got out and they let us through all the people, the crowds, the cameras and everything, and you know, we're trying to protect Sabrina. I'm a lawyer, I run my mouth for a living, so I say I'll do most of the talking. You know, Kurt there, Mr. Martin came up there and he talked and stuff. And we all trying to protect Sabrina because we know this mother is going through it. And then Sabrina, I said, can you just say thank you to the people? Can you say something to the people? And what she said, brothers and sisters, is the most riveting thing I've ever heard about this Trayvon Martin tragedy. Sabrina came up and she said to the crowd, I just want to thank you all for standing up for my son, Trayvon Martin. But he's not just my son, he's your son. He's all our son. And if it can happen to my son, it can happen to your son. So we all have to stand up for Trayvon. We all have to stand up for justice. And it was unbelievable. The crowd went crazy. And Sabrina looked at me and she said, Attorney Crump, did I do okay? And I said, wow, Sabrina, I could not have told you anything better to say. I mean, that was from your heart and God's direction. And that's what this is really about. And that's why I had them stand up and say, I am Trayvon, because, y'all, this could have been anybody's child walking home that night. Anybody's child. And, you know, that's bourgeois, black Negroes. Sometimes we say, oh, it couldn't have happened to my child. I'm here to tell you, your child. I got cases in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Leon Morton. Don't take my word for it. Go look at these cases. I mean, these are children with no criminal history, parents of profession and everything, and they shot and killed and paralyzed by people who are profiling our children as criminals and thugs and menaces to society. And as I've always said, it was bad enough that George Zimmerman profiled Trayvon Martin. What was even worse was our criminal justice system profiling Trayvon Martin. I mean, that was the bad thing, because when the police got there, man, they did a background check on Trayvon. They did a drug and alcohol analysis on Trayvon, but they ain't do nothing to the man who had just shot him in the heart. And all throughout the criminal proceeding, you saw they kept profiling Trayvon versus the killer. And so, as I stand here today, brothers and sisters, I want you to really know that in every community, there's a Trayvon. And for all these unknown Trayvons, it is a simple question. I come before you today to make a plea and a proclamation. You see, Dr. King said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at in times of comfort and convenience, but it's where he stands at in times of challenge and controversy. And when he says the measure of a man, what he's really talking about is the value of a man. And sisters, when we say man, we're not talking about gender specification. We're using it in a greater universal sense, mankind. And so what he's really saying is, what is the value of all of us? What is our value? And you know, Warren Buffett says, when you consider value of a thing, You're not talking, brother bosses, about just the value of what it is today. You see, Brother Goodman, when you go buy McDonald's stock at $30 today, you wouldn't buy that stock if they told you 10 years down the road it was still going to be $30. Your value is in what will become of the stock. And so when we start talking about value, we have to think of our value, and I digress for a minute. My mother, Carl, you know Helen, she keeps it real. My mother told me, she said that, baby, if you don't put a high value on yourself, you can rest assured the world will not increase the price on you. And so and I know, sisters, all great men may not be omegas, but all omegas are great men. So we believe we got some value. But I declare to you, my frat brothers, on this Founders Day, that our value is largely dependent on the seeds we produce. I think Alex Haley got it right. When Alex Haley said, and you all remember Roots, you all remember Kunta Kinte and the African tradition, when he went up there with Kizzy May, his daughter, and he held her up to the heavens in the moonlight and said, behold, the only thing greater than thyself. And what he's saying is the only thing greater than us is what we create. The only thing greater than us is our children. So I'm standing here to tell you all, to proclaim to you all, regardless of whatever these statistics say about our children, whatever these SAT tests say about our children, whatever these criminal justice, systems say about our children. We got to be the first ones to stand up and say our children's lives, our children's dreams, our children's hopes, our children's aspirations are just as important as anybody else's children's lives, anybody else's children's dreams, anybody else's children's aspirations. And we got to tell them that over and over again. So every statistic they put up, we got to knock it down. We got to say, I object. You all got to become lawyers. And you got to object when they start trying to discourage our children from living their dreams. Because their dreams are special, more special than anybody else's dreams. And we got to remember what Dr. King said about the ultimate measure. Because the more I go around the country, and I know it's here in Charleston, South Carolina as well, Carl. We got little boys being shot at the back by police officers. We got little boys, black and brown boys being killed senselessly. And our best trained, our most successful, our most articulate, our most educated, they don't stand up and say a word. And that's so sad, y'all. That's so very sad, because you got to ask yourself, why did God bless you with the talent and the education and the fancy degrees and put this acronym behind your name, doctor, lawyer, accountant, PhD? Why do you think God did that? He did that so you can help the least of you, so you can help somebody. And when the people need you most, you are silent. And that is the tragedy. Dr. King also said, in the end, what we remember most is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. The people who were supposed to be there with us and for us in our community when we needed them most. You can hear a pin drop. I mean, when you really need it. And so, today, it was Tracy and Sabrina's child. And if you didn't speak up for Trayvon, you sure better be careful, because tomorrow it could be your child. As I make ready to take my seat, I just want to remind you all, you young people. Now, the value of your parents and old people like me is in making sure you all have a bright future. And what you all have to do for us, you all have to dream big dreams. I mean, you have to dream dreams bigger than yourselves. Things that we could not even fathom. You see, I really mean that when you talk about those statistics and all that crap, when they say what you can't be and you'll never be. I think about my life personally. I came from not too far from here, Lumberton, North Carolina, grew up with a single mother in the projects, and what the statistics said, you know, little black boy in the projects, she's either gonna be dead, in prison, on drugs. You know, there ain't nobody say you're gonna get to be this great lawyer and stuff. That was only my grandmother, my mother, and me believing that I was gonna get out those projects. You all gotta believe, young people, you gotta work hard. You know, aerodynamically, and I'm talking just to the young people now, aerodynamically, the scientists say the bumblebee is not supposed to be able to fly. It goes against all the principles of science. But you know what? The bumblebee don't pay the scientists no attention, it just keep flying. So y'all got to be like the bumblebee. Y'all just, whatever, because we won't be there with you all the ways, all the time. And when somebody say something negative to break your heart and try to dash your dreams, you just think, they said that about the bumblebee too. And you got to remember, as Oprah Winfrey said, it is never where you start out in life. It is never where you start out in life. It's where you finish. That makes the story better. That really makes the story better. And I close with a quote from my fraternity brother, Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I love when Reverend Jackson says this here. He says, the reason people drown is not because the water is deep. The reason people drown is because they quit kicking. So young people, I just don't want you to quit kicking. Just no matter what, keep kicking. If you remember nothing that was said here tonight, remember, I'm going to keep pushing for my dream. I don't care how deep the water gets, how overwhelming it becomes, I'm going to just keep, whatever, backstroking, sweat, however you do it, you just keep moving forward. And I promise you, the man upstairs, he will intervene. He will help you out. You just got to keep trying. Don't ever give up. Whatever you do, don't ever give up. So brothers and sisters, I thank you so much for your attention. I conclude by asking your parents a simple question. Simple question. And considering Dr. King's quote about our ultimate measure, our ultimate value, I want to know if you will stand up for our children, because they need now more than ever. And it's not just Trayvon Martin. As Kurt said, I'm representing the matter in Valdosta to Georgia now that is about to become probably just as big, called Kendrick Johnson. And that is a 17-year-old kid. His parents sent him to school with a book bag. He was returned to them the next day on a body bag. And the sheriff of Lowndes County, in 2 days, concluded the investigation saying that his death was an accident based on his own doing, that he climbed into a rolled up wrestling mat to try to get a tennis shoe, got stuck, and died. I mean, yeah, give me 2 more minutes.
We here, brother, we here.
Brother Foster, as my mom said, I know I was born at night, but not last night. I mean, how foolish do they think we are? It goes against all common sense, the laws of science, and all logic, that this 17-year-old superior athlete was being recruited by the Florida Gators. He was a star football player, a star basketball player, a star track runner. And this kid is going to get stuck in a wrestling mat? You know, if this shoe was beneath the wrestling mat, and he's strong as he is, why don't he just simply pick up the wrestling mat and move it and get my shoe? I mean, it's just ridiculous. The stuff they say to us when our children dead on the street. And so we have to stand up for our children. You know, his parents, Ken and Jackie, God bless their heart. And as parents, you understand, you get it. When they take, and Kendrick was their baby child, their youngest son. I mean, simple people. He a truck driver, she a school bus driver. These people stood on the road, on the street corner with a sign for 300 days, 6 days a week, saying, please help us find out who killed our child. Because they know the way the sheriff said it happened is not true. And you all see we sued for the video, and the video came out now, and they had 36 surveillance cameras, and I mean, it is unbelievable. 35 of the cameras, Attorney Solomon, vivid and clear. You can see everything. The one camera that's pointed in the corner at the wrestling mat that can tell us the crux of the matter. It is all fuzzy and distorted. And, you know, it's just ridiculous. And to even show more than us a cover up, you know, us lawyers, we have a thing called discovery where we can ask for a subpoena and they have to produce certain things to us. They produce pictures and different things, 500 pages. And in those 500 pages, they had freeze-frame photographs of the video. And on those photographs, it had time stamps with the date. And then when they released this video, and y'all saw it on the CNN, some of you, you see a figure walking in the gymnasium that night. They turn on the light, and for 12 seconds, you see a figure walking in that gym that night, and then the camera just stops, cuts off for some crazy reason. But the amazing thing in the video that they released to us after the family had to sue for them to try to get the truth of what happened to their child, it doesn't have the time and the date. And so you have to ask yourself, did somebody tamper with the video? Because I went on record, and I've argued with the people on Fox News because, you know, anything black, they say is bad and wrong. So I argued with them. They said, Crump, how can you call it a conspiracy? You don't know that. And I'm scratching my head saying, I ain't no rocket scientist, but if the picture that you took from the video had the time and the date, and you give me the video and it don't have the time and the date, 2 + 2 don't equal 4. And then on top of that, you know, this child's fingernails are missing that could have valuable DNA evidence and skin evidence if there was a struggle. They cut off his fingernail. He's missing the clothes that he was wearing that could have valuable DNA and blood evidence. And on top of all of that, when his parents exhumed his body, they found out his vital organs were missing that would have vital evidence of trauma to show that there was some kind of struggle that killed this kid. So, do I believe it's a conspiracy? Absolutely. And do I think we all need to be standing up and saying Kendrick Johnson life matters? Absolutely. Trayvon Martin life matters? Absolutely. Jordan Davis in Jacksonville, Florida, who got shot and killed because the white guy said he was playing his music too loud, and instead of calling the police, he shoots in the car. His life matters. Ernest Hoskins, Little Rock, Arkansas, the worst of all of them. His life matters. And please read Ernest Hoskins' story. The white guy blew his head off in front of 3 co-workers right there in broad daylight, and the police took 8 days to arrest him. But Ernest was the only male in his family. He had 2 little sisters, a mother. His father had died at an early age for health-related reasons. And Ernest was the only male there, a 21-year-old college student, married to a young lady who went to Arkansas Pine Bluff, an Army reservist. These are 2 kids doing the right things in life. And Ernest is sitting at his job, the employer's house, with his employer and 3 co-workers at a luncheon. And his employer is really getting on them about their poor sales performance. And he's berating them about their sales performance. This is the evidence. Ernest simply says, well, if we're doing so bad, why don't you get off the couch and show us how it's done? 34-year-old white Christopher Reynolds, his boss, gets up from the table, walks out the room, gets his 44 Magnum Eagle gun, points it at his head, pulls the trigger. It does not go off. He pulls the trigger again, and it blows his head off right there in front of those 3 witnesses. And when his mother and grandmother called me right on Thanksgiving holiday last year, and they were out of their minds, they said, the police have not arrested this guy yet. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I could not believe it. So Carl, I flew after Thanksgiving to Little Rock. We had the press conferences and stuff, and they said, finally, we don't want no Trayvon in Arkansas. Finally, they went and arrested him. But don't you know, brothers and sisters, 14 months later, just think about this before I tell you what happened to him. Imagine if Ernest Hoskins, 21-year-old black Ernest Hoskins, went to 34-year-old Christopher Reynolds, white man, put a gun to his head, blew his head off. What would he be charged with? It would be first-degree murder, and he would be on death row. Think about Trayvon. Think about if Trayvon would have fallen unarmed George Zimmerman and shot him in the heart. You know, he could have said self-defense, stand your ground. He could have said whatever he wanted. He would have been arrested that hour, that minute, that moment. They didn't arrest the white man. He came up with a story, said that it was an accident. He was trying to decock the gun. Forgive me, Bishop. Wasn't that? H-E-double-L, was he doing pointing the gun at his head? You know, and I mean to add insult to injury, they allowed him to plead to manslaughter, which by definition means it was an accidental. It wasn't intentional. And he was sentenced to 10 years, which means he gets out based on Arkansas state law for good behavior in 2 years.
Wow.
Killed this black child who was doing everything right in life. No criminal history, college student, married. And he's dead. And that's what they allow him to do. So I say to you, brothers and sisters, our value is in standing up for the Trayvons and the unknown Trayvons, for all these people, even right here in Charleston. When it happens, you all got to speak up, because if you don't stand up for our children, nobody will stand up for our children. Thank you. God bless you.
Let's give our speaker now. Before I do this presentation, I want to say something about the function. Thank y'all for coming out, and this is what it's about. You know, it's about our fraternities and these sororities and other community organizations getting together, standing up for these kids. But here right now, I can't come behind. So what I'm going to do is ask him to come back up, Brother Benjamin Crump. Would you please come back? We're going to offer this award. This award is to our speaker, Brother Benjamin Crump, our 2013 Achievement Week speaker. Thank you, Brother Crump. Brother Crump, and excuse me on, I will get sent to you.
This is what we love.
Listen to them cues. Don't listen to them cues, brother.
Yes. And last but not least, we've spoken with Brother Crump, OC Top, which is our foundation. We're going to pledge an amount that is yet to be determined. I can give an amount, but I'm not in charge anymore. I can tell you what I'm thinking. But anyway, and I'll let you speak on that as well. If you want to ask anyone else in the community, if they want to, maybe they can just contact us.
Just very briefly, if you can, the family is traveling around trying to make, as Brenda said, this verdict will not define Trayvon's legacy. We will define Trayvon's legacy. And so what we're trying to do is get the Trayvon Martin Amendment to these standing ground laws over 30 states around America. Got the standing ground law. You all know it because South Carolina has a standing ground law. And the Trayvon Martin Amendment is just common sense legislation. It just stands for proclamation that you cannot be the aggressor. You cannot start the confrontation. You can't go start the fight, kill somebody and say, I was standing my ground. And so it's win-win, and hopefully it'll stop some of these killings that's happening everywhere. And if you can give the Trayvon Martin Foundation, we have a website, or you can get with the brothers. And we're trying to make some good out of something so very bad. Thank you.